Good morning, Tampa Bay. Happy Monday. Welcome, Channelside in the Morning, live on the Channelside Sports Network. Hope everybody had a great weekend. We're going to talk about how much stock we should realistically be putting into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 0-3 preseason performance. Obviously, it's preseason, but I mean, you do have to put some level of stock into what we saw, especially from a players trying to make the team perspective. We're going to do a heat check on the Tampa Bay Rays. I guess there was some sort of stadium news that St. Pete kind of just like the city of St. Pete just kind of like under the radar. We're like, oh, hey, we got a 33-page request for proposal. And then Franz Wagner is kind of doing a hell of a lot of work over in Germany. So we are going to kind of tie back what we were talking about on Friday, along with some expectations for the Magic heading into the season. And I think we got to start it right here. The NFL released their top 10 players finally. Seems like this list takes forever. Obviously, I understand why they do it, because it just creates conversation. You know, people are stoked about it. They're talking about it. And that's why we're talking about it here on Channelside Sports. Tom Brady takes the crown as the number one player in the NFL in their top 100 from last season. Firstly, he's the first Buccaneer to accomplish the feat, which is freaking awesome. Tom Brady led the league in passing yards, 5,316, passing attempts, 719, passing yards per game, 312.7, and passing touchdowns with 43. Of course, we see the top 10 rounded out. You have Aaron Donald at number 2, Aaron Rodgers at number 3, Cooper Kupp at 4, and Jonathan Taylor at 5. Patrick Mahomes fell all the way down to 8 from number 1. He fell 7 spots. And, you know, I've always been kind of critical of Patrick Mahomes, especially his performance last season. I really thought that Patrick Mahomes did not play well last season. But you knew the NFL, before this list even came out, you knew the NFL was not going to put Patrick Mahomes in their top 10 regardless. I do find it crazy that Josh Allen is not in the top 10, but Patrick Mahomes is. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers won the MVP, but I mean, Tom Brady in 4 of the measurable statistics for quarterbacks, Tom Brady led the league. And I think that he was definitely a snub when it came to winning the MVP. Aaron Rodgers, has 4 now? It is what it is, but congratulations to Tom Brady. I think it's absolutely fantastic that as a now 45-year-old man, but as a 44-year-old man, could lead the league in 4 measurable key statistics as a quarterback, and then also be named as the best player in the NFL of last season, which I find really strange, because if you're going to have an MVP award and your MVP is number 3, kind of seeing a little bit of a disconnect there, guys. I'm not necessarily understanding how we went from Aaron Rodgers, and I don't even, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Hop in the chat, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe it was even close in the MVP race in favor of Aaron Rodgers. I think that it was pretty, it was pretty egregious, like in lopsided, that Aaron Rodgers won the MVP award. But he's number 3. Doesn't quite make sense to me, but I mean, hey, it is what it is. Obviously, we saw Tom Brady take the field. I played 1 series, which that's kind of everything that we thought he was going to do. We saw the Tom Brady and Julio Jones connection. I talked about that on Friday. That was what I was looking forward to the most. Now, obviously, we were only going to see a very small sample size regardless, but nonetheless, we still did see it. And And that made me happy. That made me excited. My question is, how many times can we rephrase the same question to Tom Brady at Saturday's press conference following the game? You know, I know a lot of people are getting on, this reporter or that reporter or this. I don't care who the reporter is. And I can tell you from experience that a lot of the people that are jumping on a certain reporter, it's not necessarily that reporter's fault that she asks the most questions, because a lot of people just don't really speak up when it comes to press conference time. But how many times can we ask the same question about Tom Brady taking time off? Hey, Tom, you took off 10, 11 days. Hey, Tom, how do you feel about taking 10, 11 days off? Hey, Tom, when you took 10, 11 days off, was it something that, like, guys, come on, man. There's more. If the question is already asked, move on. You've got to have another question lined up. Do you not? I mean, that's our job. If we're sitting at the press conference, our job is to ask the questions. And I get it. I totally understand why you ask the question about his time off. If you combine I posted a clip of his response to the question. If you combine our views on YouTube and our views on TikTok, we're over 100,000 views. So I get why the question is asked, because it's a polarizing question. But if one outlet asks a question, the next 5 don't need to ask the same question. Just use that question in your work. Tom Brady was asked by so-and-so. This was his response. And then piggyback your thoughts on that. Not everything needs to be like an original variation of a question. Like, come on, guys. We've got to do better than that. You know, we saw Tom Brady walk out of press conferences towards the end of his time with the New England Patriots. If we don't keep it up, we're going to start seeing Tom Brady walk out of press conferences during what is likely his final season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which, by the way, we didn't get to talk about this. Sports Illustrated. This is we're going to go off the walls here for a second. Sports Illustrated on Friday released the top 4 locations for Tom Brady to sign next year. I don't know if you guys saw this. It's on the Channelside Sports Twitter. It might be on our I'm trying to think. It might very well be on our Instagram accounts as well. But we're talking about a team, the Tennessee Titans, as the number 1 team. No, it's not going to happen. Why would, first of all 4 of these teams. Well, let's break this down real quick. You've got the Tennessee Titans, the New York Jets, the Chicago Bears, and the Las Vegas Raiders. First and foremost, I guess we're going to do this Raiders nonsense all season, right? Dana White dropped the knowledge bomb on us that MFer was actually Derek Carr and not Jimmy Garoppolo. The deal was essentially done for Brady to go to Vegas. But now I guess we're going to ride this wave of, oh yeah, guess what? Tom Brady's going to go to Vegas next year. I guess this is the new hotness when it comes to some of these polarizing topics, if you will, around the NFL. There's literally no reason for Tom Brady to go to Las Vegas when they re-signed Derek Carr. I mean, that's it. There's no reason for Tom Brady to go to the Chicago Bears. They've got Justin Fields. That's their quarterback for the future. They've already committed to Justin Fields. They know what to expect from Justin Fields. That's their guy. The New York Jets. Why? Why would Tom Brady want to go from an embarrassment of riches at the wide receiver position in Tampa Bay to the New York Jets? So what? Just Chris Olave going to set the league on fire? doubtful. Could be a solid receiver, don't get me wrong, but Chris Olave is not going to set the league on fire. So they've got Zach Wilson. Obviously, he got injured. So what are you going to say? Tom Brady's going to come in and be the Joe Flacco to Zach Wilson? Like, that's not a thing. And then the Tennessee Titans are, well, no. They've got Ryan Tannehill, for whatever reason, he's been serviceable in Tennessee. They drafted Malik Willis. I want to know how Sports Illustrated came up with those 4 teams. And maybe it's, some people are going, yeah, it's clickbait. Maybe it is clickbait. But when you're an organization like Sports Illustrated, you don't need to put out clickbait stuff. So I personally believe that somebody actually believes that Brady is going to sign with either the Titans, the Jets, the Bears, or the Raiders next year, which is mind-boggling to me. It's absolutely insane that we are really going to sit here and say, yeah, Tom Brady has the possibility of signing with one of these teams. I see people are still throwing out the Dolphins name, especially over on Twitter right now. You guys are throwing out the Dolphins name, which is crazy to me. But I mean, look, it is what it is. If Tom Brady does play again next season, I still don't believe that it's going to be with the Bucs. I don't think there's, I don't think there's any like bad blood with Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. Some people obviously are still riding that Bruce Arians, that made up beef with Bruce Arians and Tom Brady. I don't buy that. I don't think there ever was, and I don't think there ever is going to be any beef between Tom Brady and Bruce Arians. But that's where we are. I think Tom Brady's going to sign. I think he hangs it up after the season. I think that's pretty cut and dry for us to think that Tom Brady is going to hang it up after the season. Maybe he doesn't. I guess it depends on how he performs this season. The offensive line didn't look terrible. It really didn't. On Saturday, Kyle Trask didn't look terrible. Here's the problem for Kyle Trask, guys. The problem for Kyle Trask is we had the bar. And I think that this is also part of his fan base as well. But we had this bar for Kyle Trask set so low. Florida doesn't produce quarterbacks. Look at Tim Tebow was bad. They haven't had a good quarterback since Spurs. I can't even think of who the last good quarterback to come out of Florida was, or decent quarterback. But these guys, they don't produce quarterbacks. Essentially, this is a school that doesn't produce quarterbacks. They produce great wide receivers. They produce great secondary players, but the University of Florida is not a quarterback school, and there's nothing wrong with that. If one of their quarterbacks happens to pan out, that's great, but that doesn't make them a quarterback school. So we have to kind of reel in our expectations, right? I think that's the issue for Kyle Trask, is knowing what we knew about Trask heading into training camp based off of what we saw last season. Kyle Trask wasn't that good. We had low expectations. Kyle Trask comes into training camp this year, does not play very well in training camp against, doesn't matter, first string, second string, third string, or hopefuls. Guys that really don't even have a chance to make the roster. He just didn't look great in training camp. First preseason game comes on, plays pretty damn well. And then all of a sudden it's, oh my God, everybody aboard the Kyle Trask train. Now we put out a t-shirt for you guys. Trask to the future. That's the thing. We see this out of fans. But the problem is Kyle Trask didn't play poorly in the third preseason game. Second preseason game, not that great. But we raised because we had such low expectations for Trask when he came out in the first preseason game and he played pretty damn good. We threw that freaking bar. We threw that through the roof. And now we're sitting here and our expectations are super high for Kyle Trask. And that's the problem, is that we needed to hone in our expectations and go, Yeah, well, it is preseason, right? This is the time where guys try to like round themselves out, where we try to see who's going to make the team, how the depth chart is going to fall in order. We knew Kyle Trask was already going to be QB3 heading into the season. That was pretty much a given. I'm still very much a believer that Todd Bowles is a genius when it comes to damage control. And I'm very much a believer that Todd Bowles showed his genius in damage control the day after Clyde Christensen said, yeah, Kyle Trask ain't competing for that job. But he couldn't replicate what we saw in his first game. And that was the problem for him. Another person I think that's going to have a problem, and we have a poll on our Twitter account right now. If you head over to Channelside Sports on Twitter, you can vote right now. Does Scotty Miller make this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team? It's looking like it's a pretty hard no that he's not going to make the team. He didn't do himself any favors on Saturday night to make his case. And I get it. Scotty Miller is a fan favorite. You know, we all of us, we're all, I don't even want to use the word guilty, but we all do it. We all find these underdogs that we kind of hitch our wagons to and go, yeah, this is my guy. I saw glimpses of really good stuff from my guy. I'm going to hitch my wagon to him because I love to tell people I told you so, especially when it comes to sports conversations and sports debates. Everybody wants to say, I told you so. But that's not always going to be the case, guys. We love an underdog story. Why do you think everybody loves Rudy? Right? Why do you think everybody loves Miracle when the U.S. beat Russia in the Olympics? Like, we love a good underdog story, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when we make ourselves true believers of an underdog that does not possess the actual abilities that it takes to make a team, and then we get disappointed if that player doesn't make the team, that's problematic for me. That's where I have an issue. I have an issue going, yeah, well, Scotty Miller is better than this person. He's better than this person. He's had the opportunity to show us that he was better than these people, and he didn't. We talked about in the first two preseason games, he was targeted less than 4 times combined, and he played a lot of snaps. Why wasn't he targeted? Has anybody gone back and watched the game and just put a spotlight on Scotty Miller? You couldn't get separation. He couldn't get open. If you're a wide receiver and you can't get open, and he's not that tall, first of all. If you can't get separation and you're a tall guy like a Mike Evans or a Devontae Adams, a Kenny Golladay. I say Kenny Golladay because his last season in Detroit, he was the least open receiver. Maybe it was second to last season, but he was the least open receiver, and he had more receptions than anybody who was within like 2% of openness. If you look up next gen stats, you'll see what I'm talking about. And taller guys can make catches when they're not open. Smaller guys usually can't because you got to climb the ladder, but you're climbing the ladder against a player that's probably as tall as you, if not taller than you, in a cornerback. That's how it works, unfortunately. Scotty Miller didn't do anything to help himself. Look, we know that Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Julio Jones, Russell Gage, and Tyler Johnson are on this team. We know that those 5 are on this team. I honestly do not know who that 6th person is going to be. Is it going to be Devin Tompkins? Maybe he's on the bubble. Is it going to be Scotty Miller? He's on the bubble as well. Cyril Grayson obviously got cut. Jalen Darden. I'm still a very strong believer that this team wants Jalen Darden to succeed. Jalen Darden can also return punts. Scotty Miller doesn't. So outside of wide receiver, Scotty Miller has less of a team-oriented value than Jalen Darden does. So do we see Jalen Darden edge out Scotty Miller simply for the fact that he's able to return punts at a more successful rate? It's possible. You could see Jalen Darden edge out Scotty Miller, but I don't think Miller's going to make the team. If he came out on Saturday night and just lit it up, I mean, if you search for Scotty Miller, go to Twitter, search Scotty Miller, organize it by latest, and just read all of the comments. And a lot of these people that are making these comments of Scotty Miller's gone, he's done, he's not making the team. These are like the believers in Scotty Miller. Maybe we should unhitch the wagon from Scotty Miller, guys. I love him. I love Scotty Miller as a player. I love the underdog story just like you do. But if you're not good enough, you're just not good enough. And that's what it boils down to. Tyler Johnson understood his assignment. Tyler Johnson came out in the first preseason game, lit it up on offense. When it caught 7 of 9 passes on the first preseason game, he completely lit it up and he understood the assignment of, I need to make this team. I need to do everything that I possibly can to make sure that I'm reeling in my catches, that I'm racking up yards after catch, that I'm breaking tackles, that I'm making good, solid catches in traffic while they're highly contested. He understood the assignment. Scotty Miller, not so much. So I really don't know. I think the only thing that we realistically know about who made the team is the kicker. That's all that we know is that out of all the questions, that's all that we have right now. It's interesting. You've got to figure this out. We've got to look at, tomorrow's D-Day for a lot of these guys. Nobody really stood out in terms of wide receiver, especially for the undrafted free agents, as Jay in the chat said. So who knows? Who really knows? And we also know that Todd Bowles is a good talker, guys. We know that Todd Bowles is going to give us just enough to make us all want to talk about it. Tyler Johnson definitely made the team. I would be absolutely shocked if Tyler Johnson was on wide receiver 5. I had to count. Sorry. I would be absolutely shocked if Tyler Johnson did not make this team as wide receiver 5 behind Russell Gage and Julio Jones. My thought is when they're running 3 wide receiver sets, I could see them utilizing Chris Johnson in the slot and putting Mike Evans and Julio Jones out wide. I know that they're going to do it occasionally, but I could see that becoming more of a thing, and then rotating Gage and Godwin. You can put Godwin outside as well. But I think that we're going to see that a lot more. We haven't seen Russell Gage at all for the preseason, really. Russell Gage has been hampered by, he's arguably going to take that Julio Jones injured role this season. That could be problematic for the Buccaneers. But I think it's okay. They've still got at the top of their wide receiver depth chart. I mean, that's enviable by any team in the NFL. You can be the biggest hater and go, yeah, well, Julio Jones is often an 80% Julio Jones is still a better wide receiver than the vast majority of this league. Russell Gage can miss a couple games, and the Buccaneers are still fine at wide receiver. You still have Mike Evans. Chris Godwin has looked good in what we've seen from him in training camp. Obviously, we know they're taking it easy on him. You don't want to push him. I think they're going to be A-okay on wide receiver, so I'm looking forward to it. Jay, I said this on Friday as well. This Tom Brady and Julio Jones connection is going to be very, very undervalued by a lot of people, solely for the fact that they're haters. That's the only realistic way you can sit here and go, yeah, Tom Brady and Julio Jones isn't going to be that good because Julio Jones is going to be injured. If Julio Jones isn't injured, I've got some humble pie for you. Slide in the Channelside Sports DM and we'll send me your address and I'll ship over some humble pie. I'll even next day air it to you because you're going to run into some problems if you are basing the Buccaneers' success or lack of success upon Julio Jones being injured. Because Julio Jones is still wide receiver 3 or 4, depending on how you look at it. I still slightly put Julio Jones above Russell Gage. I know Russell Gage got the start, but that's because they don't want to put Julio in the slot, obviously. But I still think that Julio Jones has the third most upside of this wide receiving team. And I would argue that he could possibly, depending on how Chris Godwin comes out of the gates when he's ready, whether it's week 1 or 2 or 3 or whenever they decide to fully take all restraints off of Chris Godwin, I would argue that Julio Jones possibly has a little bit better and a little bit higher upside, even just a little bit, than Chris Godwin does based off of where they currently are injury-wise. Call me crazy. I know. But that's why we're here, guys. That is why we are here. The Rays, buddy, guys, look, they dropped 2 of 3 against the Red Sox. I get it. You don't want to drop 2 of 3 against the Red Sox. Look, and that's frustrating, especially when the Red Sox were reeling because they got beat up by the Blue Jays. But look, sometimes things get away from you. There were 1 out of the 2 games that they lost got away from them. Third game where they lost by a run, or the second game where they lost by a run, it happens. It gets away from you. The first one was just a bad outing. But here's the difference, guys, is the Tampa Bay Rays pummeled. They absolutely pummeled the Boston Red Sox in the third and final game with their 12-4 victory. And to me, that makes up for any of the lost momentum that this Rays team suffered at the hands of losing 2 out of the 3. I think that's something that you have to take into accountability, and you have to go, yeah, well, it wasn't necessarily the outcome. This is the first series they've lost in a long time, and they lost it to a team who are the Red Sox a bad team? I don't know if the Red Sox are a bad team or if the Red Sox are just a struggling team. That's the problem for the Red Sox. And that's why I'm not too hung up on not being able to sweep the Red Sox or win the series 2-1. Would it have been nice? Of course it would have been nice. It would have been nice to, increase that 1.5 lead over the Toronto Blue Jays and possibly shrink that 7.5 game gap from the Yankees. The Yankees have lost 2 in a row now as well. I mean, we could be talking about a 5.5 games spread between the Yankees and the Rays had things gone the way the Rays wanted to, and they swept the series. They didn't. It's okay. But you still scored 12 runs in the final game. This is what you, especially, God, when you're going against the Miami Marlins. So we got the Marlins, and then we've got the Yankees. We got the Red Sox again. And then I believe we go to New York after that. And then Toronto. It's not a bad stretch, guys. September's right around the corner. We've got 2 days until September. We know September is going to be, it's an absolute gauntlet in September. So where is the confidence level for this team? I'm going to look, I've been as realistic about this Tampa Bay Rays team as I can be, basically for the entire season. I mean, we started Channelside in the morning at the end of May. As realistic as I can be about this team, my confidence level is extremely high because they're figuring it out and they're not healthy yet. That's what makes me a believer in this team, is there's still a patchwork roster. They've still got a lot of injuries. Franco's not back. Glasnow's not back. Chigua's back, sure, but they don't have all of their pieces back. And they're figuring it out. So if you're figuring it out now, and then when you start getting these solidified pieces back, whether it's Wander Franco, I mean, just think about Arozarena, Franco, Diaz. I mean, you're talking about a great, dangerous lineup at the plate. Siri's been okay. Like you're talking about a team that can realistically get it done, and their pitching is finally coming around again. The pitching has been pretty solid all year. There was a little bit of a lull at the end of July, and now it's all coming back. Everybody's pitching well. Rasmussen's pitching well. McClanahan's pitching well. Kluber's pitching well. They're all pitching well. Shane Baz is going to come back. Tyler Glasnow is going to come back, who also just got a 2-year contract extension with the Rays. I mean, guys, you've got to have as down as I have been at some point with this Tampa Bay Rays team, you've got to be realistic. You have to look at this Rays team and go, 89% chance to make the playoffs or not. I think it's ridiculous that they've got 89 and they're leading by a game and a half over the Blue Jays, who have like a 94% chance, and then the Mariners have a 91% chance, something like that. But they're still third, but they're still winning, right? They're still in the first wild card slot, regardless of the percentage of odds to make the playoffs. I'm very excited, and I am looking forward to this Rays team making some noise and making some moves in September, because we know that there's a gauntlet in September. And at the beginning half of this season, we saw the Rays kind of beat the teams that were difficult, beat up on the Yankees a little bit, beat up on the Blue Jays, but then really dial it back and really play down to their opponents and lose the games that they should win. Now, a lot of that was when they were plugging and playing guys that are calling up from Durham. Now they figured it out. Now this team they're still 7-3 in their last 10, and they're still a dangerous team. I don't know if I have an actual percentage to give the Rays on my confidence level, but it's high. It is very high as we head into September and look ahead to the playoffs. I'm very high on where the Tampa Bay Rays are. Something I'm not very high on is the stadium-ish news. It's kind of news, kind of not news. I'm kind of confused. So the city of St. Pete puts out a 33-page request for proposal on Friday, and it largely kind of goes unnoticed. Not many people talk about what came out. And they're essentially, what they're doing, and I understand what they're doing, is they're talking about redeveloping the Tropicana Field site. I think it was like an 86-acre redevelopment is what they're looking at. But they're no longer calling it the Tropicana Field site. They're calling it the gas plant site. And they're really trying to hone in. And I understand that this is as political of a move as it can get in terms of tying politics to sports. Mayor Kenneth Welch comes out and says, we had a thriving area. We had a lot of jobs, and we had a lot of people have to get displaced when we were fortunate enough to land a Major League Baseball team that was once known as the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, but they're now known as the Tampa Bay Rays. The city of St. Petersburg did not live up to the expectations of creating more jobs. It did not live up to the expectations of creating more housing and creating more retail. And they're really, really honing in on trying to keep, this is my thought here, is they're trying to hone in on keeping the Tampa Bay Rays in St. Petersburg and not move to Tampa by pulling the pity card. You got rid of a lot of jobs, and I get it. That's what happens in this country all the time. It's not like it was a one-off and it's like, oh, this was the only time this ever happened where we had to displace jobs and we had to relocate people to build a stadium, to build a mall, to build whatever. It's not the first time, and it's definitely not going to be the last time. In America, when it comes to construction and it comes to redeveloping, we tear stuff down. That's what this country does. Look at the Roman Colosseum, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the Great Wall of. Look at like all of these other landmarks that have been there for hundreds and thousands of years, and then we just tear stuff down because that's what we do in America. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's what we do. So when we play this pity card of, well, we had to build a stadium because we got lucky. Save it, man. You all in St. Petersburg, you guys have all had ample opportunity, whether it's the current mayor or any of the previous mayors. You guys have all had ample opportunity to make something happen and come forward with a decent plan. And all you guys have wanted to do is have a pissing match with whomever was in office before you. I don't care about the displacement. I'm sorry, I don't. I care about getting this done and having it in our rearview mirror and not having to talk about a stadium again. That's what I care about. We lose jobs all the time. It's a sad reality, but it happens. That's what we do. I don't care about you pulling the pity card and going, well, we're not going to call it the Tropicana Field site anymore. We're going to call it the gas plant site because we really want to strike a nerve. If you wanted to strike a nerve, you would have pulled this card a hell of a long time ago. You're probably about 10 years too late in renaming it from the Tropicana Field site back to the gas plant site. You're about a decade late, guys. I don't care. It didn't deliver on the promise of building new jobs. That's not our fault. As baseball fans, that's not our fault. As the Tampa Bay Rays, that's not their fault. That's the city of St. Petersburg fault. So now you want to redevelop Tropicana Field. Where are the Rays are you going to build it next door? Because if you look at any of these proposed options of building this stadium, if you go through this document that they put out and you look at any of the proposed documents or the proposed images of what the stadium is going to look like, you're going to have to clear a hell of a lot more stuff out again. So the pity card doesn't work. When you're trying to tell me we didn't live up to the promise, you're going to have to displace more jobs anyway. Shut up about it and move on. You had your time. The right business decision for the Tampa Bay Rays is to move the team to Tampa. Is baseball as popular as football? It's not. But when you've got a Thursday night football game, and because people use this a lot and they go, oh, well, baseball is played during the week. When you've got a Thursday night football game, it is sold out way more often than having an empty stadium. Way more often. When you are looking at a baseball team that is one of the hottest teams in the major leagues, I don't care if they don't spend money. That's not what this is about right now. I don't care if Stu Sternberg is cheap on the dollar. That's an irrelevant conversation right now. If you have the Tampa Bay Rays in a location that is more feasible and more realistic for people to get to, a la the fairgrounds. We'll use the fairgrounds as the example because I think that's my favorite location out of everything that I've seen. If we're going to use this as the example, you cannot tell me that the hottest team in baseball, which has a 45% uptick in availability for people to get to within like 20 minutes. You got a 45% uptick in availability for people to come to a game There's going to be a hell of a lot more people at games, and it doesn't matter when they are. How many times did you watch the Chicago Cubs when they weren't even that good in the mid 90s? How many times did we watch them on WGN playing a weekday afternoon game to a sold out crowd at Wrigley Field? You mean to tell me that we can't do that in Tampa? I guarantee you we could do that in Tampa if the stadium is in a better location that is more feasible and more realistic for fans to get to. I use this talking point all the time, and I'm not going to stop using this talking point. From my house to Raymond James Stadium is a 21-minute drive. It is, I believe it's 18. I think it's 18 miles from my house. To get to Tropicana Field from my house is 3 miles difference. It's a 21-mile drive from my house to Tropicana Field. It takes me almost an hour to get to Tropicana Field from my house, and I can get to Raymond James in less than 20. Tell me how that makes any sort of sense. Why would I even debate on going to a Tampa Bay Rays game if it's going to take me an hour each way? Why would I want to do that and then go and listen to everybody else just kind of not do anything? I can listen to the guys crunching on their on peanuts. Like, come on, guys. It's ridiculous. Loose Cannon's Leprechaun, what's going on, buddy? I just look, guys, you gotta figure it out. The best business move is to move it to Tampa. I know I was talking with Primetime Pelly, and we were kind of talking about, yeah, well, concert tickets, people will drive hours for a concert. And I understand that, but you've got 81 home games to go watch your favorite baseball team play or your local baseball team play. You've got 81 opportunities per season. Your favorite artist or your favorite band, they might tour once every 2 years. So there's a difference there, because I'm much more inclined to travel to watch a band like Metallica. I've drove from Tampa to Daytona to go watch Metallica at Welcome to Rockville 2 years ago. Actually, no, I drove from Naples. I had a 6-hour drive to go watch Metallica, but it was worth it because they don't come on tour very often. I've got 81 opportunities to go watch the Tampa Bay Rays play at the Trop. So I don't want to have to drive an hour to go watch them. And that's where your difference is. Sure, you can talk about tickets, but I mean the Rays are not that cheap when it comes to ticket prices either, and that's a problem too. You already have a pain in the ass to get to the stadium, and then I got to spend more money once I'm at the stadium than some of these other teams. Look at their ticket prices for the game against the Marlins, starting as low as $5. And a lot of these times you can buy the cheap seats and you can move down because there's not anybody in front of you, especially during these. Who's excited to watch the Rays and the Marlins? Nobody's really excited to watch the Marlins. You should be excited to watch the Rays because they are one of the hottest teams in baseball, which ties back to my entire point. If this team was located in somewhere in another spot where it was easier for people to get to, we're not talking about attendance issues, and everything plays off of each other. I did the math earlier in the season. They make about $330,000 per game based on their average ticket sale and their average attendance. You can afford a superstar, but why do you want to bring a superstar to play in front of a 50% capacity? You don't. That's the problem. So when you talk about the pity party and we displace the jobs, I don't care. And we're moving on. Just like you should move on. Franz Wagner is getting some hella big comparisons over in Germany from Basket Magazine. Is he the next Wunderkind? They're comparing him to Dirk and Detlef Schrempf. Guys, that's fantastic company. Right? Like if you're drawing comparisons already to Dirk, I mean, and I get it. It's more of a foreshadowing. Like, can he get to the level that Dirk was at, or even the level that a Detlef Schrempf was at? Of course, Detlef Schrempf was one of the key role players for the Seattle SuperSonics in the '90s. Obviously, he was kind of largely overshadowed by Gary Payton and Sean Kemp being there, but Schrempf was a fantastic player. Franz Wagner's been doing work in Germany. Absolute work in Germany. He had 16.7 rebounds in their last win, which should qualify his country for next year's FIBA World Championships. I don't want to say he didn't play well against Luka Doncic, who got, I think he had 23 points, but look, man, Franz Wagner is young. Obviously, he was a rookie last season. But I think this is the interesting part in the dynamic of what Franz Wagner is you're looking at a player that people are very high on, but they're also very reserved at the same time. So we look at a player like Franz Wagner and go, all right, he averaged 15.2 points per game last year as a rookie. I expect an uptick in him. I'm sure everybody kind of expects an uptick in his production. But I'm currently seeing more people talk about Jonathan Isaac's workout video that came out over the weekend, which, guys, we're all excited to see. We all want to see Jonathan Isaac workout videos. We want to see Jonathan Isaac putting in the work. We want to see him being able to come back, win the most improved player of the year, sixth man of the year, possibly, depending on how they rotate. But this is what we want. Like, we want it to be good talking points for the Orlando Magic. I think Franz Wagner is really he's kind of falling under the radar. Obviously, he's going to be in the starting lineup, but he's kind of falling under the radar, especially to Jonathan Isaac. And I understand why there's excitement around Jonathan Isaac, because he's largely disconnected himself from basketball over the last 2 years to promote his book and his podcasts, and he's on interviews, and that's fine. But to me, that's where I was looking at Jonathan Isaac going, dude, you got to show me something. You got to show me that you care about basketball, that your mindset is in there. Meanwhile, Franz Wagner is over in Germany tearing it up for his country, likely putting them in the World Championship next season. We've got all the focuses on Cole Anthony. People are really high on Cole Anthony. Obviously, Paolo Banchero's bringing all of the excitement in the world with the number 1 overall pick. What could be in store? What could be in store for Franz Wagner next season? I'm looking at like an 18-point season for Wagner. I think 18 points is a realistic number. And that's kind of where I expect him to be. I think everybody's going to be a benefactor of Paolo Banchero being on the floor. But this kind of ties back into what we were talking about on Friday. Of course, if you missed the show on Friday, we actually have a separate segment specifically geared towards, should the NBA ban out of league play? Meaning pro-ams, playing for your country, anything that could be a detriment to your team, should the NBA ban it? And this is where I have a difficult time saying that they should. There's contracts, there's a lot of money, and that's all understandable, but we'll use Wagner as an example. If Wagner comes out in his second season and he's looking at 18, 20 points a game, which is, I mean, as a rookie, he was at 15. Largely not talked about by the national media because the Magic only won 22 games. If we are looking at Franz Wagner coming in, averaging 18, averaging 20, or somewhere in the middle between there, Does that happen if he's not allowed to play in Germany? Because what is he going to be doing in the offseason? Was he going to be playing 2K? That's not going to help, right? That's not going to help you in real life. What are you supposed to be doing if you're a basketball player and you're not allowed to work on your craft? Basketball is a different game than football is. Football, you can't go out and really play a game of pickup football. And correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm a wide receiver, or if I'm playing wide receiver as a regular human being, I'm pretty sure that I don't want to match up against Carlton Davis if I'm playing at the park. Because A, that's not going to be any fun for me. B, if I happen to catch the ball and we're playing tackle, I'm going to get absolutely obliterated by a guy who tackles people for a living versus me who talks on camera for a living. It doesn't matter what kind of shape I'm in. I don't tackle and I don't take hits for a living. So you can't go out and play pickup football, but you can go out and play pickup basketball, right? I mean, we see it all the time. We see guys, we've seen it with LeBron James in the Pro-Ams this year, whether it was the Drew League, I guess kind of at the crossover. Obviously, we saw Chet Holmgren match up with him, and we all know how that went, which is why we're talking about the possibility of banning out of season play. But if you can't perfect your craft off season, that's problematic. Remember when Michael Jordan was filming Space Jam when he was coming back and he had like that bubble where he had just invited certain guys to come out and play basketball with him? That would be banned. That's not fun. Like, that's not. Hey, you're hurting the camaraderie between the players in the league, because we know that not all, but a lot of the players in the league are cool with each other. They're friendly. They have, friendly rivalry competitions, and they've got all of these other great things. But we're looking at the possibility of saying, like, you can't perfect your craft. You cannot participate in basketball. You can't do these things outside. And I think that is a huge detriment to the league, especially when you've got a player like Franz Wagner, who is doing work in Germany right now and arguably going to help the Orlando Magic solidify a larger crowd with the German audience. That's why we do these world games, right? Is because we want to expand the product and we want to have new fans in new countries for new teams. That's why we do it. That's why the NFL is going to Munich for the first time with the Bucks and the Seahawks. Is because we want to expand the product. That's why the NBA has all of these global games this year, because you want to expand the product. And if you say that my guy can't play overseas for his country, that's a problem for me. Is he going to, he poses the same risk of getting injured overseas as he does in a regular NBA game. It happens. Things happen. Injuries happen. And for us to say, like, okay, if we're not going to allow Franz Wagner to play, because like I said, what's he going to be doing? If you tell me that he cannot play for Germany because we're worried that he's going to get injured, you could be talking about a guy who played a very productive rookie season with his 15.2 points per game. He's going to come out and he's going to be flat. Oh yeah, that's what preseason's for, and off-season training camp. Like, you can get injured in training camp. Ask the Buccaneers about that. Ask Ryan Jensen how his knee feels about training camp. Do you think Ryan Jensen wanted to get hurt in training camp? Do you think anybody wanted him to get hurt? No. You think Aaron Stinney wanted to go down for the entire season in a preseason game? No. But that's the risk you take as a professional athlete, because these are not regular 9-to-5 jobs. No matter how much you want to try to compare them and go, well, I wish my job would let me do that. You work a regular ass job. You're not a professional athlete that gets paid millions of dollars to play a sport. You can't compare your regular 9-to-5 job to what these athletes do. If you want to compare your 9-to-5 job to an athlete, look at an Olympian. 9 out of 10 Olympians are working 40-hour day jobs on top of training. Those are the people you should compare to. because they're just like you and I, except they're a hell of a lot more athletic and they compete on a world stage every 4 years. 2 years if you count the world championships. Those are the people you should compare yourselves to. You shouldn't compare them to NBA players, NFL players. Oh, well, he took a knee. My job would fire him. Exactly. Your job would fire you because it's not the same. So when we tell our guys that, hey, cannot perfect your craft off season, it's a problem for me. It's a problem for me because your job, and I get it, it's difficult for Adam Silver, but your job as the commissioner of any league, whether it's Rob Manfred, Roger Goodell, Adam Silver, Gary Bettman, it does not matter. Your job as the commissioner of your league is to advance the product. And to advance the product, you cannot do that by negating advancements. You can't say, well, you know what? We're not going to let our guys play for their home country because we don't want them to hurt themselves while they're playing over there. That's a risk you take. You decided to be a global entity. You decided that, hey, we're going to start drafting players from overseas. If the NBA is largely American players, there's no problem. Right? There's no problem if the NBA is largely American players, but it's not anymore. It's a global game. Guys play for their country. People are proud to play for their country. Guys on Team USA love to play for Team USA. Like, that's how it works. If we want these guys to do this, knowing that, hey, Ricky Rubio might not come over to the NBA for 4 years after we draft him and play for the Timberwolves, that's the risk you were willing to take. It's a problem for me if we're going to look at the possibility of banning out of season play, especially when we tie it to Franz Wagner, who took his great rookie season and he's building upon it because he's able to play for Germany. That's a problem for me if we tell a player for that, because it's now we can see a direct effect if that happens. If Franz Wagner comes out and builds upon that 15 points per game, do you really think it would be because he sat on his hands at home? No, it's because he was able to play at a high level still. And we literally can't look at ourselves and look at the mirror anymore and say, yeah, well, playing for your country overseas, that's not quite the same as the NBA. He just got done guarding Luka Doncic. What are we talking about, guys? What are we talking about when we say, oh, yeah, well, it's not the same? It is very much very related and very close to the same. That's just the fact behind it. It's not nearly the same as it was in the early to mid 90s because we were not getting players from overseas. We were not getting players. That's why it was always a big deal when you were like, oh, this guy's going to play for that. Oh, wow. Okay. So he's playing for this country. Like, that's why it was a big deal in those times. Now it's not a big deal. Now it should not be a big deal. When Manu Ginobili played for Argentina, it wasn't a big deal because we knew he was from Argentina. And the game is global now, and it's moved on and it has advanced. And these are all things that we have to deal with as fans. These are things that Adam Silver has to deal with as a commissioner. And these are things that NBA owners are going to have to deal with because you opted to make the game global. That's all I got, guys. That's all I got for today. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the show. If you didn't, please catch it on a replay. It was hot today. I appreciate you tuning in on YouTube, James. That's where we got to get the whole crowd over to YouTube, man. That's what we got to do. We got to slide over to YouTube. That's where, because I know what's going to happen. We're going to end the show today, and Facebook's going to be a pain in my ass, and that's what's going to happen. Anyway, I am Danny. Thank you all for tuning in. If you did not catch it on the replay. We're going to start segmenting the show out for you as well. So if there's a particular thing you want to watch, you don't got to siphon through everything. I love it. I love it. This is Channelside in the Morning. Make sure you follow us on all of the social media platforms. We're on TikTok now, and we're over 100,000 views in less than 24 hours, which is freaking ridiculous. Thank you for tuning in. Hope to you enjoyed the show. Hope to catch you guys tomorrow. Hop in the YouTube chat tomorrow and let's all chop it up. I'm Danny. I'll see you tomorrow.